Alright, so we're going to do task number 1, which is our blood sample specimens. So we have our lovely patient here, Logan. We're going to get some blood on him. I have a bunch of tubes here. I have a 2 ml red top, 3 ml red top. I have a 4 ml tiger top. I have a 2 ml purple top EDTA. And then we do need to run some special tests on him. So I do have a small 1 ml green top tube that we can use for that. I have my syringe, so we're going to draw about 9 or 10 mLs of blood, cc's of blood on him. So I have a 12 ml syringe. I have my 22 by 1 needle, alcohol, and I'm going to use a tourniquet. Jess is going to help me restrain, so I'm going to use the front cephalic vein here. Feel for the vein first. Do my alcohol. And insert the needle bevel side up. So I've got 5 here. So because I want to get the anticoagulants done first, I'm going to fill those up first. And you want to fill to 90% of the tube. I'm going to do a couple gentle inversions to mix. I'll do the purple top. What I do with my purple tops, because when I recap it there's pressure, I just stick my needle back into the top of the tube to relieve some of that pressure so that the top stays on. I'm gonna set this aside. Sorry, buddy. I'm gonna give this leg a rest. I'm gonna try the other one. You're such a good boy. So now we have our full tubes, our purple top and our 2 serum collectors, our red top with no additive, our serum separator tiger top, and then our green top for the special testing. And then we'll go and run these. Alright, so this is kind of an intermediary point. I'll back you up a little bit so you can see me a little bit better. So what I've done of this point I'm at now is our red top tube and our tiger top tube are sitting, they're going to sit for about 15 minutes so that the blood can clot within it. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to prep my tubes so that they have a balance for the centrifuge. So I have our purple top tube here, which does not need to sit like the red top tubes do to clot. It's got the EDTA, the anticoagulant, and do not ask me to say EDTA out because I could not say it. I blunder it every time. I have this one out, and what I'm going to do is I have an empty purple top tube that I'm going to fill up to balance it out. I also have a 18 gauge needle, and what I'm going to do is very carefully stick the 18 gauge needle into the tube, and this is going to release the pressure. I'm going to see if you can hear the hiss. Oh, maybe not. So stuck it into the tube, and that releases the pressure of the vacuum within the tube, and it also allows me to fill it up with water when I put it back in, so there's not a ton of pressure in there. So I'm going to pop the cap. Alright, so inserting my needle to release the pressure, and what I'm going to do is just turn our water on, and I'm going to pop the cap carefully because the needle's in there, and I'm just going to fill the tube up. So our tubes are filled, when we do our blood, they're filled to about 90%, as close as we can to get it. And then I'm just going to check and make sure. I like to rest both of my tubes on a finger to see if I get an accurate measurement. So I'm just going to try to take another drop off of this. So I'll spin it so you can see if I rest it on the bottom here of my finger that this is pretty close. So I have this rested on my finger to try to get an even match, and then those are really close to being just about the same. So I'm going to put my cap back on, and I'm going to leave my needle in it, and that's going to allow me to put my cap completely on without any problem. And then I'm going to pull my needle out gently, and then do my one-handed capping method. Put my needle back on. I'm going to put this away, throw it away in our sharps container. I'm going to put these in our centrifuge, and I'm going to grab our other samples and specimens as well to put in our centrifuge with these. So I'm going to pause, and I'll be right back. Alright, so now it's time to centrifuge. I have our specimens here. So the red top and the tiger top have clotted really nicely. And then I have my purple top here with its balance as well. So I'm going to open our centrifuge. Our centrifuge runs a little bit fast. It runs about 500 RPMs fast. Blood you want to spin around 3,500 to 4,000 RPMs. So I'm going to set ours to be about 4,500 RPMs, and then I'm going to spin them for about 10 to 15 minutes. Ours actually has an automatic timer, so it shuts off automatically at that point. So usually I don't even need to set a timer, it just goes off and it kind of dings. So I'm going to pop the top, and I always check to make sure there are no other samples in here. Sometimes one of our other technicians will accidentally leave the balances particularly in here, and then when you go to put them in and you're not paying attention, you get a misbalance. So I want to make sure I'm putting opposite to opposite. So the tiger tops are on opposite sides to balance, red tops on opposite sides, and purple tops. And I'm trying to get an even space as well so that they stay evenly distributed, and that way you'll get a balanced spin. If you don't have a balanced spin, then you can break your motor in your centrifuge, things can go flying off, and it's not pretty. So I'm gonna turn this on, start it up, and I'm gonna turn up the RPMs because this is set to 2000. Alright, so I'm just going to leave this to set and spin for the 10 to 15 minutes, and I'll be back when it's done. Alright, so our centrifuge has literally just stopped running. We hit the time, so I'm just waiting for it to completely stop spinning here before I pop it open. Okay. And what I'm going to do is we just keep a needle and syringe here, and I'm just going to pierce the very top of the tubes to get our samples out. Alright, and all three of those are our balances, so I'm going to put those aside. 1, 2, 3, and spin this around. And take out all of our samples. Ooh, 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 that's not good. Uh-oh. Shoot. Alright. Alright, I'm just going to cap our needle. And I'm going to set our needle aside to be used another day, along with our balances to be used again. And I'm going to take these over to the lab area, so I'm going to pause you and we'll be right back. Alright, so we are back in the lab, and I have our 3 samples, and I have just 3 empty red top tubes. Actually, I'm going to grab a needle too. And this is just going to help me get my caps on and off again. So I'm going to label all these tubes. Dog, Logan, plasma. It's going to go with the purple top. Logan, serum. And I'm going to do 2 separate ones because I dropped one of our samples, which is why it's always a good idea to get 2 different samples or tubes of samples, because in case something happens to the first one, you always have the second. Serum, Logan. And I'm going to label this one drop. But this will give us a good view of a couple different samples and what they're going to look like. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to start with our plasma, the purple top. Actually, I'm going to decap our container. Take the cap off the purple top. Alright. So what I'm going to do is just use a pipette to gently suction off all of the plasma. I'm trying to get as close to the red blood cells without actually picking any of them up. I think that's about as close as I might get. Maybe just a little bit more, but it might be getting green here. Might be able to cap that. No, that's going to cap just fine. Alright, and then the next sample. I'm doing the same thing with this one. I'm gonna get a clean pipette. This is the one that I accidentally had an issue with. I'm just gonna pull off the serum. This is not an EDTA tube, so this one has serum, and the blood in it has clotted. So the EDTA with the plasma, the difference between the serum and the plasma is the plasma does not, or sorry, the plasma does have the clotting factors in it. Because we use the anticoagulant, the clotting factors are still there. So unlike this where the blood has completely clotted, you can see I can turn it upside down and it's stuck there. This one, it's all just still loose red blood cells, so it kind of still is more of a fluid to it. So this purple top, EDTA, clotting factors, red top tube, no clotting factors in the plasma because it's all stuck there in the red blood cells. Alright, cap that. And then I'm going to do our serum separator. So the nice thing about the serum separator tubes is it does have this nice gel in it that separates out the serum from your clot, your red blood cells. So what I'm going for is just all of this nice stuff right in here. And I'm just going to put my pipette right above that serum gel, trying not to get any of the gel in my sample. But this also, the gel helps to ensure that you don't get the red blood cells in. Okay. Alright, so we got our 3 samples. And I'm just going to pause you for a second and we're going to sit down and talk about our 2 serum samples and our plasma sample. I just wanted to take a minute to sit down and talk about the samples that we just collected. So as I said before, we have our plasma and our serum. The main difference between the plasma and the serum is the clotting factors. So the plasma still has the clotting factors because the EDTA prevents the clots from forming. Whereas in the serum separator or the no additive, the red top tube, there is none of that anticoagulant going on, so the clot still forms naturally. So that's the difference between these two. You will notice in this patient there is some yellowing to the serum, so I'll put it kind of next to this piece of paper so you can see this kind of orangey yellow color going on. So this dog actually has some degree of liver failure going on. That's why we took the sample from him. We needed to run other blood work to test his liver values. So he does have some icterus going on. He's slightly jaundiced. He is on liver medication, so he is currently on the denamarin. So we're monitoring his liver values to see how he is doing on that, to see if that's doing an adequate job boosting the liver production and everything. So with the liver values, that can be caused by several different things. Usually it's either the failure of the liver. You can get certain types of anemia that are going to cause the jaundice. So it's just a excess production of the bilirubin in the system. It's not being taken up correctly. So that is what that is. If this were to have a more opaque appearance to it, more whitish opaque, you couldn't really see through it well, then this dog would be lipemic, and that means there would be a lot of blood in the sample. So a lot of times we get lipemia from dogs that have not been fasted adequately prior to the blood draw. Usually we ask that the dog be fasted at least preferably 12 hours prior to the draw, or at least they withhold breakfast for that morning if possible, and then that usually helps. If this sample were lipemic, that can cause other changes in the blood chemistries, so things like bile acids, magnesium tend to go up, but there are other things that also tend to go down, such as the ions, sodium, potassium, chloride, bicarb, all would tend to go down on our tests due to lipemia. Also, we use Vett scan VS2s, and if we have a sample that's very, very lipemic, it actually kind of clogs up our machine, and our machine can't read them at all. And in that case, we would need to send it out to an outside lab in order to run it and get a more accurate read on that sample. The other thing you look for when you're running a sample is redness. So you can see kind of this readiness in this sample. This is the serum. This is the red top tube that I accidentally dropped pulling out of the centrifuge. So what this can be causing, this is a damage of the red blood cells, and this is pretty exactly what hemolysis would look like. So inadvertently, I gave us a good sample of hemolysis. So hemolysis is caused by damage, like I said, damage to the red blood cells, either in mishandling of the sample, as I did, or if you have a bad draw, if the dog is very wiggly on the table, he's really fighting, or the cat, or if you're not using the correct needle size. So if you're using too small of a gauge needle, too thin of a needle, you can cause hemolysis. Or if you're putting the blood into the tube using a needle and you're really forcing the blood in, that can cause hemolysis as well. So those are both things that we look for. This is user error hemolysis, obviously, but we would not necessarily want to run that, especially when we have a tube full of good serum. We would not want to run this one because this one could falsely increase other numbers such as potassium. It could falsely increase our total protein, even sometimes our creatinine. So that would not be an ideal sample. It can also, on the flip side, start decreasing some things. So you'll see typically less bilirubin, amylase, and bicarb when you run a hemolyzed sample. So something to watch out for. Typically what you're looking for is a nice sample that's clear like this. I mean, even if I swing it in front of my scrub top here on the camera, you can kind of tell it's changing colors. So you want something that's kind of clear like that. But you want it a little less yellow in color. Like I said, this dog is just a little bit on the icteric side, just a little bit jaundiced, but we're monitoring those values. So that should be just about it. Thanks.